I started a true crime channel and uncovered haunted movie theaters with unbelievable secrets. I never should have opened that door. The moment it creaked, I felt a chill wrap around my spine. I was just a regular guy with a humble YouTube channel, diving into the world of true crime, nothing too crazy. But then I stumbled upon the whispers of haunted movie theaters. The kind of places simmering with ghostly tales, secrets buried behind silver screens and popcorn-scented air. The thrill of it gripped me. Setting out on this journey, I found myself standing outside an old theater. A behemoth of crumbling bricks and faded neon, it loomed like a forgotten memory. Shadows danced across the pavement as the sun dipped below the horizon, leaving me in a cold embrace. I took a deep breath, the air tasted stale and thick, a reminder of the ghosts said to roam within. I opened the door, and a rush of frigid air greeted me, sending a shiver through my bones. The darkness swirled inside, thick as fog. Every step echoed, a hollow sound amidst the silence. The lobby stretched before me, adorned with peeling posters of movies long forgotten. There was something unsettling about the way the shadows flickered, as if they were alive, whispering dark secrets only they could comprehend. Suddenly, a thud. My heart raced. I turned, but there was only the empty hallway leading to the projection room. It felt like the walls were closing in, the air thick with anticipation. I could almost hear the whispers, the voice of a long-lost soul, trapped in this place. My hands trembled as I fumbled with my camera, ready to document whatever awaited me. The cold intensified, creeping under my skin. A strange noise reverberated, like the rustle of fabric. A chair moved in the distance. I stopped and strained my ears, listening. The chill wrapped around me tighter, every shadow an unwelcome presence. It would be easy to turn back, but curiosity clawed at me, pushing me onward. What had happened here? What stories lay buried? Just then, a loud bang echoed through the empty theater. I froze, fear tearing through me. My heart thundered in my chest. I was no longer sure if I was merely an observer or if the theater wanted me to stay a guest in its haunted story. I stepped backward, wanting to escape, but something tethered me to the spot. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw it. A figure, just a shadow, standing at the end of the corridor. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The figure stood still, cloaked in darkness, an silhouette that dared me to inch closer, yet warned me to retreat. I could hardly breathe, an icy lump lodged in my throat. My camera, formerly a tool of curiosity, felt like a weight, my hands trembling as I aimed it at the enigmatic shadow. The lens barely captured the features, but something glimmered in the periphery, a glint of light. Or perhaps just a trick of the palpable gloom. Hello. I called, my voice barely above a whisper, swallowed by the oppressive silence. It echoed back to me, unsettling and alone. The shadow shifted slightly, blocking what little light pierced the darkness, molding itself into a grotesque shape, one I almost recognized yet couldn't place. My instincts screamed at me to flee, but I stepped forward instead, each footfall like a drumbeat in the quiet. I tried to rationalize the figure, an illusion, a trick of my exhausted mind. The hours I had spent researching ghostly encounters were all culminating in this moment, blurring reality and horror. But rational thought slipped further as I caught a flicker of movement. Suddenly, an ear-piercing wail erupted from the depths of the theater, a blend of fear and despair that clutched at my heart. Adrenaline surged, and I turned, sprinting toward the sound, heart racing like a horror movie track, erratic and thrilling. I could feel the atmosphere shift, thickening to a suffocating weight, as if the very air contained malevolent energy. My camera's light flickered uncertainly, illuminating grotesque carvings on the walls, faces that seemed to twist in agony and terror. I stumbled into the main auditorium, not entirely aware of where I was headed, only fueled by an irrational need to unveil the source of the sorrow echoing around me. The vast rows of decaying seats loomed like silent spectators, waiting for a film that would never play again. Shadows played tricks, elongating over the dusty floor and creating figures I feared might rise any moment. A sliver of silver light caught my attention, reflected off an object on the stage, something moving slightly, perhaps swaying with a rhythm unheard, then it stopped. The air became thick with dread, every heartbeat reverberating like a drum, loud and intrusive. Lip service to bravery evaporated as I noticed the glint of what looked to be an old film reel, a rusted tin that had somehow wound itself out of a dream. But the film reel was open, torn, and the old film strip spilled out like a dying snake. I approached the stage, the faint smell of burnt rubber and chemicals mixing with the musty scent of the theater. My hand cautiously arched toward the silver strip sprawled on the floor. Maybe it was just old footage of some forgotten horror flick, but as I grabbed a piece, flashes of distorted images ignited my mind, faces, blurry figures writhing as if caught in an unspeakable agony, echoes of their screams invading my thoughts. Then, out of nowhere, the distortion came alive, as a chilling voice clawed at my psyche. "Help us, trapped!" I staggered back, fear gripping my throat with icy fingers as the shadows began to swirl around me. The previously static rows of seats creaked, as though shifting to face the stage. I realized, unervingly, that the audience was alive with ancient souls watching, their faces distorted with despair, forever yearning for salvation. Before I could fully comprehend, a freezing touch brushed my shoulder, sending electric shockwaves through my body. I whirled around, heart thundering louder than ever, but nobody stood behind me, only the dark all-consuming. Then a whisper, harsher than grit scraping on glass, began to seep into my consciousness. "You shouldn't have come here." Everything fell silent, the wails dimmed into a haunting echo, and the air turned bone-chillingly cold, wrapping around me like a vice. My breath came out in visible puffs, betrayal etched across my face as a figure emerged from the shadows once more. This time, they stepped forward, a ghostly visage with sunken eyes and terror painted across their hollow features, mouth twisted to form a scream that would never escape, and then the lights went out. The darkness swallowed me whole. A distant laughter erupted, sinister and mocking, as I felt hands grab at my ankles, pulling me down into the void. Panic surged. "You don't belong here," the chorus of voices chimed in unison. A vibrant flash momentarily illuminated the theater, revealing what sprawled beneath me, a multitude of spiraling bodies, faces frozen in horror, just like the victims of the reel. As the darkness closed in tighter, I screamed, my voice swallowed by the void. I didn't know, but the laughter only grew louder, echoing through the abyss. My heart thumped against my ribcage, a frantic rhythm that echoed through the stifling darkness. It felt as if the air itself had thickened into a suffocating shroud, weaving around me like a dense fog, pressing against every inch of skin. I struggled to maintain my grip on reality, but the sharp pang of fear lodged itself in my throat, drowning out my thoughts. The laughter resounded, mocking and cruel. I couldn't tell where it was coming from, a disembodied entity feeding off my terror, or perhaps the spirits of the forsaken souls that cascaded through the theater like a tide of ancient sorrow. I closed my eyes tightly, huddling my frame against the fear like a child clinging to the last flickering flame in a dark room. My grip on the camera tightened, a leftover artifact of the outside world, its little beam of light collapsing under the weight of the shadows. As I opened my eyes, hand trembling, I flicked the camera back on, casting its beam into the suffocating black. Dread clawed at my insides as the light swept across the auditorium, revealing ever-shifting shadows and the remnants of seats long defiled by time. The figures I had seen before were no longer mere reflections, they swayed softly, their eyes wide with eternal pleading, mouth moving in silent screams that burrowed into my mind. I was surrounded by the amalgamation of their Pina gallery of horror played in the theater of the damned. The overwhelming urge to run surged within me, but I was paralyzed by the sheer terror etched in their faces. I stumbled backward, tripping over my own feet, fumbling with the camera as the beam flickered. The sudden disorientation shot through me, disallowing escape. I heard something, soft whispers weaving through the closing gulf of darkness. a language I could not comprehend but felt overwhelming dread from. Join USA. Cold razoring touch gripped at my ankles, disparate hands entwining around me as if the very darkness sought to anchor me into its malevolent embrace. I couldn't shake free. The more I struggled, the tighter the grip became, ripping at my flesh, dragging me towards the abyssal void where the flickering images of despair flourished. With a surge of instinctive desperation, I clutched at the camera, rapidly expanding the light once more. As the beam connected with the pulling darkness, it illuminated a warped visage in the corner, an amalgamation of faces twisted into an unspeakable expression of rage and hopelessness. Their mouths opened in synchronized agony, revealing rows of teeth stained with the remnants of their last cries. That I stumbled backward, adrenaline coursing through my veins, propelling me toward the stained stage. I yanked my foot free and dashed forward, breath coming in harsh bursts. But the sinister laughter escalated, flooding the theater with a suffocating dread that trapped me in the confines of its terror. Help us trapped. The echoes grew louder, vibrating across the cracked floorboards. I could feel the buildup of ancient anger, a manifestation of souls grounded between the mortal realm and the afterlife. My eyes darted to the film reel that had drawn me here in the first place. Mesmerized, I stumbled to its remnants, fingers clutching the tattered edges, realizing that it might hold the key to their anguish. "What do you want from me?" I screamed, voice trembling, feeling every ounce of vulnerability in that moment. As the shadows shifted maliciously, causing a cacophony of panicked whispers to swell, I caught sight of one wretched spirit breaking from the throng. A slender woman with hollowed eyes, moving closer, her mouth contorted into a silent scream, walking toward me as if in slow motion. The air thickened, and time unraveled around her, marking my impending doom. "Don't you see?" she rasped, voice like the rustling of dry leaves. "You have brought us back. You must finish what was started." Suddenly, the lights blazed back on, washing the theater in a harsh brightness, the cruel relief not soothing but shocking. I staggered, vision adjusting as I bled away from the woman. The shadows recoiled, but her eyes latched onto mine, carving frozen guilt into my heart, the truth of her words wrapping around my head like a noose. The laughter stopped abruptly, ushering in a deathly silence, and in that stillness, I realized the immense weight of their torment. A veil lifted, exposing the truth. The people in the audience were not solely victims of a cruel fate but a congregation of restless spirits trapped in a cycle of haunting anguish begging for release. With newfound determination, I glanced back at the camera, wondering if I could use its eye to capture this moment, to unveil what atrocities had occurred here. But it was then that I noticed the reflection on the lens. Me face, pale and lost, but behind me loomed a figure unyielding and raw, more terrifying than anything I had witnessed before. A looming shadow surged forward, mouth agape in a scream that seemed to rally the entire theater of lost souls around it. My scream was lost in the chaos that ensued as darkness enveloped me once more. "Finish it," they urged, voices melding into a cacophony, a sobering command that reverberated against the walls. I felt the ground shift beneath me, and I knew I wasn't escaping this horror, but rather plunging deeper into their agony. The connection was forged. I had succumbed to the theater's curse, tethered to the very souls whose horror I had unwittingly drawn forth, and with a scream that split the air, the forgotten reel began to spin, blasting out images of terror that morphed into my own reflection, leaving me paralyzed with the grave realization, I was destined to take my place among them. The last sound I heard was that of my own despair echoing throughout the theater, as they awaited a reckoning. The temperature dropped like a stone, biting against my skin, as spectral winds howled through the rafters of the theater. I could feel the presence closing in, stronger than it had been moments before, as if the spirits, those echoing figures of sorrow, had infused the air with a darker purpose. The flickering lights cast grotesque shadows that danced along the walls, their laughter now a haunting symphony that resonated deep within my bones. Panic clawed at me as the stolen moments of tape thundered against the back of my mind. Images whirled in and out of focus, merging together in a chaotic tapestry that blurred the line between memory and imagination. Each flicker of the projector cast images of anguish, faces contorted in horror, the rows of headstones revealing their grotesque pain. I stumbled back, but there was no escape. The whispers wove tighter around me, like vines, each shivering brush rank with despair. "Join us," they intoned in unison, their voices merging into one colossal plea that transcended language. It was an invitation laced with obligation, curling around my spine and filling my chest with the weight of their torment. As I gazed at the lens of the camera, I fathomed the true power it held. It wasn't just a recording tool, it was a conduit, a portal through which their suffering echoed into reality. An icy fire ignited within me, a desperate resolve to unveil the truth of this ruined theater. But in that resolve, I felt a fracture in my sanity, peeling like fragile wallpaper, revealing the madness lurking just beneath the surface. Stepping closer to the screen, the film began to shift, displaying scenes that struck a visceral chord. A group of lively patrons, their laughter ringing out in a sepulchral mockery, watching a performance unfold. But the joy morphed into horror, and there, in the frame, I saw shadows creeping in from every angle, smothering the light of the stage as tendrils of the past grasped for their souls. The film crackled with static, exposing their fates like fish caught in a net, thrashing and gasping in their final cries. Suddenly, an alarming growl erupted from deep within the shadows, the murmurs of the trapped souls escalating into a frenzy. Their faces surged from the depths of despair on the screen, clawing towards me, mouths stretched wide in silent screams. My own breath hitched in my throat as I realized with horror that I was not merely an observer, I was the focal point of their anguish, slowly molding my face into the next image of despair. Finish it. The chorus of spirits cried out again, and a dark presence surged forward, tearing itself from the chaotic tapestry of film. Cloaked in shadows, it glided toward me, an ominous figure that defied description. Every instinct in me screamed to turn and flee, but my legs rooted me in place, the weight of the souls bearing down upon me, an invisible tether chaining me to the ground. The figure paused, its mocking features emerging from the blackness. Eyes of an empty void met with mine, promising eternal torment. "You've awakened what should have remained buried," it rasped, its voice reverberating like splintering wood. "You think yourself the hero? No, you are merely the latest pawn in a game structured by suffering." I tried to back away, but the stage floor beneath me twisted, contorting into a whirlpool of anguish and regret. I couldn't escape. The air crackled with raw energy, and suddenly, the darkness of the theater swelled, snatching at my ankles, dragging me down toward the cracked linoleum floor that felt alive under my weight. Through the encroaching agony, a thought illuminated in the haze. Perhaps the film was a record, but it could also be a key. If I could unravel its purpose, shift its narrative like the spirits had pleaded, I might find a way to break the chains binding them to this place. But would that mean confronting the truth of my own existence, my own hidden traumas? Was I to spill my own pain to appease theirs? At that moment, a rippling in the air revealed another film reel, hanging like a ghostly ornament from a dilapidated hook. The essence of an unfinished story pulsed through it, calling to me with a siren's honk. With the room spinning and spirits clamoring for my attention, I mustered every shred of courage to take a step toward it, but the unseen figure, still lurking in the periphery, let out a roar that shook the foundations of the theater. Moments before I could touch the reel, a wave of darkness surged around me, a whirlpool clamoring for my soul. My vision narrowed, a blinding fluorescent light enveloping me, pulsating as time tore itself apart. It was too late to turn back. I felt the ground beneath me dissolve, the theater's walls closing in around me, the cacophony of voices rising into a frenzied pitch. In that final moment of clarity, as the torn fabric of reality gave way, I understood that this was no ordinary haunting, it was a soul-consuming ritual, a hunger that crossed the eons, and just as the darkness descended, I realized I was not alone in this chaos. The figure now stood beside me, its whisper curling around my ears. "You shall never leave," it hissed, and the world plunged into silence just before the shocking revelation tore through me. 1,000 eyes turned in my direction, longing, asking, and ready to receive. Then I felt a hand, cold and unnatural, wrapping around my wrist as the final tear in reality broke, dragging me down into the infinite void, battling against the very grasp of oblivion. I fell into a black chasm, spiraling endlessly, the weight of the souls around me pooling in a heaviness that pulsed in time with my heartbeat. I was no longer aware of the theater, nor the memories of the past blurring at the edges of my vision. All that existed was an ethereal noise, whispers of sorrow intermingled with my gasps for breath. As I plummeted deeper, eternal cries seeped into my bones, each echo resonating like an ancient hymn sung in a forgotten tongue. Then, abruptly, I landed, not on the solid ground I had expected, but upon a surface that shifted like liquid. My vision cleared, revealing a surreal landscape that defied the laws of nature. Shadows flickered like candle flames against a backdrop of twisted trees, their gnarled branches reaching out as if to snatch me away. The air, thick with a foul miasma, made each inhale feel like a betrayal of my lungs. As I stood, dazed and shaking, the presence beside me materialized with clarity. It was now a nebulous figure with a face that shifted, one moment portraying sorrow, the next masking a sadistic grin. "Welcome to the underworld of your making," it said, its voice a chilling caress that settled warmly in the pit of my stomach. "You wish to unearth the truth, but truths are slippery beneath the weight of grief." Before I could respond, the ground shivered violently, and I was hurled forward into a jagged landscape of fragmented memories, each shard reflecting a moment snatched from the reel of that cursed film. The screams, the laughter, the anguish, they all played out in vibrant images that pulsated with life. They advanced toward me like a relentless tide, dragging me into their web of melancholy. That I stumbled through a scene where shadowy figures mingled, their faces obscured by a fog of despair. But as I drew nearer, one face crystallized into clarity, familiar yet distorted. It was someone I recognized, a child from my past, her innocent eyes wide with silent pleas. "Help us," she mouthed, though no sound escaped, her lips moving in desperate rhythm. The boy next to her, his face marred by spectral tears, echoed her sentiment, his stillness more heart-wrenching than my growing horror. "Don't be fooled by their appearances," the figure beside me hissed, residing in my peripheral vision. "They are just fragments, lost and seeking solace in your weakness." No. I shouted, the strength rising from my resolve barely enough to drown out the voices pleading for release. "They are not weak, they've been trapped here." My voice wavered but didn't falter, peppering the air with certainty against the rising dread. As the spectral children reached forward, their cold fingertips barely grazing my skin, the world around me distorted like a cracked mirror. Shadows erupted from the ground, spiraling around the figures of the children and myself, smothering the light. In that instant, I felt an overpowering urge to fathom what haunted me, a morbid curiosity entwined with fear. That I grasped at the air surrounding me, willing it to come together to bring forth answers from the chaos. The figures morphed into desperate silhouettes, rushing forward one moment, fastening against me like a vice the next, pleading, laughing, crying in a chorus that shook the very fabric of my being. Then, a sudden clarity radiated around me. At the heart of this ghostly purgatory, I saw a luminous structure, a theater, identical to the one I had come from but brighter, alive with echoes of performances long past. Was this my gateway back, or the final performance in this hellish play? The shadows writhed, their desires and anguished cries piercing through the haze surrounding the theater. It beckoned, even as the figure beside me slipped into the curling fog. "Choose wisely, for the past must always be paid," it warned, its tone a hypnotic lull that sent a shiver down my spine. As I stepped closer to the door, its glowing arches flooding my senses, I suddenly felt a tightening around my wrist, not from the unseen presence, but from those spectral hands of the child I had recognized. She pulled me back, a look of terror rooting her in place. "No, don't touch it. It devours souls." Before I could process her warning, the door creaked open, releasing an ethereal glow that was both inviting and repulsive. My heart pounded louder than the chorus of ghosts behind me, a drum solo of fear. The theater pulsed in time with my heartbeat, drawing me toward it, promising answers and secrets wrapped in the silks of deception. But just as I teetered on the brink of decision, the scene warped violently. The ground, liquid-like beneath my feet, splintered open, revealing dark tendrils that surged up, grasping hungrily at my legs. I was on the brink of losing myself in the void once more, when from the edge of the abyss, a voice like thunder rolled through the din. "We shall see how far your resolve stretches in the presence of your own regret." The last thing I saw before everything went black was the reflection of the theater, its bright glow beckoning to me in defiance of the darkness, daring me to join the puppets rehearsing a final act of tragedy that had yet to unfold. And the ground gave way beneath me. I woke with a gasp, the crushed velvet of a seating cushion pressed into my back, a jarring contrast to the wet tendrils of darkness still clawing at my mind. The theater was familiar, the air now stale and thick with the ghost of popcorn and despair. I was not alone, phantom shapes drifted lazily between the aisles, their forms shifting through the flickering light of a long-forgotten projector. They whispered, their voices intertwining in a cacophony that rattled the very bones of the building. "Welcome back," a voice drifted from somewhere close. I turned, my heart lurching. It was the same nebulous figure, now unfurling before me like a grotesque flower. "Did you enjoy your journey? The underworld has many layers, each more deliciously depraved than the last. But worry not, you are exactly where you need to be." I pushed myself up and scanned my surroundings, my pulse quickening with dread. The decor alternated between lavish and decayed, glimmering chandeliers danced above us, cascading shards of light that painted macabre patterns on the walls, while the seats were torn and rotting, like the remnants of a grand performance long abandoned. That I focused on the shadows cruising through the theater. They were familiar, like fragments of an old film. Each figure flickered like a film reel struggling against the harsh crunch of an error. The faces were indistinct, yet every turn revealed hauntingly familiar eyes. I felt a pull, an eerie sense of recognition tied to each fragment. My heart sank, they were the souls of those I hadn't saved. The specter stirred beside me, sensing my turmoil. "Their stories are intertwined with yours, you know. Each has a secret, a desire, a pain that feeds the darkness of this place. Dig deep enough, and perhaps you might find your own buried truth." "No," I gasped, backing away as the whispers thickened, intertwining with the arid scent of decay. "I will not dwell here any longer. I refuse to be the puppet you want me to become." But the figure only smiled, its features shifting like shadows elongated by the flickering light. "And yet, whether you wish it or not, the performance must continue, and you are its star. Each choice you make builds the narrative." With a tremble, I squinted toward the screen above, where a new image spilled forth, vibrant and seductive. It was a memory I recognized all too well, the night at the fair with my friends, our laughter drenched in the aroma of caramel. How idyllic it seemed, the scene luring me in like a moth drawn to flame. "Come," the figure coaxed, stepping away into the encroaching dark. "Relive it, or rewrite it. Your desires spill into reality here. Perhaps this time you can change the ending." That a shudder ripped through me. The memories stung like thorns, but they were also a siren's call. I was not ready for the anguish that lurked beneath this seemingly innocent facade, nor the laughter I heard morphing into cries, the echoes that shadowed every joyous moment. Tentatively, I leaned in toward the screen. The laughter warped, bleeding into a chant of eerie solace. "Help us. Please remember." I closed my eyes, overwhelmed. A vibrant wave swept over me, and reality twisted again. That I was there, in the fairground. I could almost taste the cotton candy, feel the warmth of companionship, but something was off. My friends were distant figures, their faces obscured by malice veiled in smiles. Each one bore a haunting resemblance to the phantoms in the theater, their laughter twisted and tainted like a discordant melody. "Your way out lies within what you've buried," the whispering chorus urged, now resonating from everywhere. "Will you face it, or will you turn away?" Panic coursed through me, a stinging realization rippling through the serenity as shadows coalesced, swirling around my feet like roots whispering of long-held secrets. I turned, the world around me warping again, until I stumbled back into the warmth of the theater. Except now everything felt wrong. The lights flickered, the laughter twisted into a screech that ripped through my sanity. That I sought the nebulous figure. But it had vanished. Instead, the seats were alive, writhing with the forms of those long forgotten, their twisted faces now visible, mouths stitched shut but their tormented eyes pleading for release. "Join us," they harmonized, a chilling lullaby that sank into my bones. "This show has only just begun," and then, just as I prepared to scream, the screen erupted with a vivid montage of every decision I could have made differently, flashing images of lost chances, laughter turned to screams, and shadows that lunged into the light. The walls pulsated, closing in around me, vibrating with an otherworldly hum. And I felt myself being pulled toward the screen again, my own ghostly figure stepping closer to the forefront, where nameless horrors awaited. That I gasped as a searing pain lanced through my wrist, an icy grip binding me in place. The ghostly audience erupted in a frenzy, their ethereal hands stretching, grasping, each face a mirror of my deepest fears. I suddenly understood I was entangled in the threads that wove my past to this present horror, a tapestry that threatened to consume me. Will you confront your regret? A voice boomed like a thunderstorm as the shadows spiraled into a vortex around me. Or will you be forever tied to this falsehood? The screen flickered, and for a heartbeat, I glimpsed a familiar face twisted in despair, someone I had lost, a name drowning beneath the weight of 1,000 haunted memories. And just as I reached out to touch the screen, the world imploded around me, shattering reality itself into countless shards. Everything went white, and I felt as though I had fallen into oblivion, swallowed whole. But before the darkness could envelop my consciousness, one thought resonated louder than anything else. In this theater of shadows, I may discover not just my truth but the horror that lay waiting beyond the veil. And the moment I thought I grasped it, a voice echoed in my mind, "Welcome to your first act." The void swallowed my senses. An eternal stillness reigned, but just as I began to discern the weightless serenity of nothingness, a dark echo began to rise, a sinister hum vibrating through the very fabric of my being. Suddenly, the darkness shifted, twisting as though a kaleidoscope of despair was reassembling itself into something familiar yet grotesque. I found myself sprawled on the cold, hard floor of the theater again, but this time it felt different, heavier. The air buzzed with a palpable tension, thick as syrup, and a sharp, metallic scent clawed at my nostrils. I scrambled to my feet, scanning the once enchanted half-light where vivid images now warped into hideous forms. The flickering projector cast a crimson glow that bled into the atmosphere, framing the ghostly figures like grotesque marionettes poised for a grand performance. The hushed whisper of forgotten souls thrummed in the air, their voices coalescing into an unsettling harmony. "Face your fears, or become one of us." They echoed, their tones drenched in a sorrow that chilled me to the bones. The seats that had previously held still phantoms shifted menacingly now, writhing with a malevolent life of their own. I felt their hollow gazes land on me, hungry and expectant, as I stumbled backward, heart racing. Each face bore the marks of tragedy, shadows of secrets woven into the fabric of the night. A clattering sound drew my eyes to the stage, where the forgotten relics of a bygone era lay, a cracked mirror, its surface smeared with film, reflecting not just the theater but flashes of lost moments. With hesitant steps, I approached the stage, drawn by an unseen force. The whispers intensified, swirling around me like a storm. "Look closer. Do you see it?" They beckoned, merging into a single, elongated voice that prickled at the back of my mind. That I leaned in, cautious, slimy reflection shimmered, warped by time. For a chilling moment, it was my face staring back, but then, images began swirling in the glass, scenes of horror and despair that I dreaded to confront. I saw that fateful night when everything changed, the laughter of friends drowned in chaos, snuffed out with a single decision. And amidst the chaos, my own reflection twisted cold into villainy, laughing through tears as reality unfolded. Panic surged through me, but I could not look away. Each flash of the mirror unraveled thread by thread, weaving a tapestry of anguish and guilt. Flickering images transitioned to warped memories of my friends drowning in shadows, their laughter transcending into haunting wails. The pleading in their eyes grew frenzied, screams of hurt trapped behind flakes of gleaming glass. A skyward fissure appeared above the stage, the vibrant moon glaring down like a giant eye. My own silhouette emerged within the reflection, dancing chaotically amid the tormenta puppet on strings woven from my own regrets. "You turned away, and now it claws back," the spectral voice boomed, the very walls vibrating with its wrath, choking back my terror. I turned to flee, but the exit had vanished, replaced by an endless wall of darkness, impenetrable and cruel. Shadows coalesced before me, their forms shifting into grotesque parodies of the friends I had lost, their mouths moving in silent agony. "Help us," their unison pleaded, morphing into a guttural growl that resonated deep within me. That I staggered backward, colliding with a spectral figure, the grotesque flower of before, bold and insatiable. "Will you fight to rewrite your fate, or succumb to the inevitability of despair?" It taunted, extending a cold, clawed hand toward me. "Let me go." I screamed, my voice breaking as I stumbled across the stage, desperate for escape. But the shadows surged closer, enveloping me in clammy tendrils that dragged me back toward the mirror, forces pulling me as they echoed not with laughter, but despair, join us. They hissed, their tones stripping away the layers of bravado I clung to. Their eyes held centuries of torment, promising release yet offering ruin. Not knowing to escape or confront the abysmal truth, I lunged at the mirror one final time, feeling the jagged edges of memories catch against my skin. And as I braced for impact, the mirror shattered, each fragment spiraling into an array of blinding light and darkness. In the chaos, I glimpsed a new horror emerging from the depths, a shadow, larger than life, looming beyond the veil of glass, its features indistinct yet chillingly familiar, and then, just as the shards of reality began to cut me clean from my past, that shadow surged forward with a cacophony of anguished screams, a monstrous fusion of despair and longing. I braced for revelation, but instead, all light faded, consumed in an abyss of echoing whispers. Welcome to the second act, a voice hissed, slithering through the void as the fear coiled tightly around my heart. In that suffocating darkness, I understood with bone-deep terror, the only way out was through, and something far worse awaited in the depths. The darkness relinquished its grip only slightly, a thin veneer cracking to reveal the grotesque tableau of the theater itself, a twisted amalgamation of shapes and memories warped by the passage of time. My heart pounded like a war drum as I pulled myself fully into this disorienting realm, where the very air felt charged with dread, pulsating as if it had a heartbeat of its own. The stage was a graveyard of remnant feelings, where cruel laughter merged with the cries of the long-forgotten, echoing off walls steeped in decay. I barely registered that the seats were now filled, not with the specters I had once envisioned, but with forms rooted in memory, grotesquely pieced together from the shadows. Their faces morphed from those of my friends into unrecognizable shells of anguish, swaying, captive to an unseen conductor orchestrating their despair. I staggered back, feeling as though reality was bending around me, each breath heavier than the last. Then, a flicker at the corner of my vision drew my attention to the stage once more. A figure began to emerge, illuminated by a ghostly spotlight that pierced the gloom. It was a woman draped in tattered film, her hair and unkempt mane threading through wisps of fog. Her eyes were two hollow voids, orbs of despair that bore into my soul. "Do you remember me?" she croaked, her voice raspy and sorrowful, reverberating like a forgotten melody. Recognition flooded my veins, sending icy tendrils creeping up my spine. It was Olivia, the life of our group, lost that fateful night. Her once vibrant face now stretched into something unholy, lacking the warmth of memory. "Help me, please," she begged, a shudder running through her form, the horror of her pleading swallowing me whole. "I'm trapped here because of you. No," I shouted, staggering back from her, my mind racing. "I was you turned away," she screamed, her voice piercing, each word like dagger thrusts into fleshy sorrow. The whispering shadows rose like a tide around her, pulling at her limbs, trying to draw her back into the abyss. "The other side is worse, help me escape." The air crackled with tension as Olivia's spirit writhed, begging for release. It was not only her pain I felt, but the keen edge of guilt that slashed through me, thoughts spinning like a cyclone. I could not move, fear had stitched my feet to the ground. Yet, there was something more, the sensation that I was being watched, scrutinized by hundreds of unseen eyes, fixated on the fragile dance of desperation unfolding before them. "Help me," she echoed again, her voice layered with ghostly agony, reverberating against the grimy walls as the shadows tightened their vice around her. "You can't let me stay here." My heart raced 1,000,000 miles per hour, each beat a drum of despair as the walls vibrated with inhuman laughter, echoing off the theater's decrepit confines. A primal instinct ignited within me had to act. I took a step toward her, but the shadows slashed forward, clawing at me with cold, clammy fingers. They wrapped around my ankle like chains forged from despair, dragging me down as I wrestled against them in sheer terror. "Free her!" A chorus sang from all around, a ghastly demand woven through the air. The scent of decay and ancient sorrow hung heavy. The lights above pulsed erratically, showering the scene with grotesque illumination. No. I screamed, hurling myself toward Olivia, desperate to shatter the chokehold of the gathering darkness. I reached for her hand, but the moment our fingers brushed, the world exploded in a synapse of spectacular horror, the theater transformed, walls bending grotesquely around me, as though the very fabric of space and time buckled under unseen pressure. Blinding light erupted from the darkness, forcing me to shield my eyes. And when the light dimmed, I found myself alone on the stage, the audience still chanting demanding, awaiting judgment for my choices, their faces contorted in shadows twisting before my very eyes. At that moment, a new figure appeared in the void, a silhouette larger and more sinister than any horror I had encountered before. Its presence warped the shadows, absorbing them into its sinister form. It began to drift toward me, a malevolent wraith woven from darkest fears and long-buried guilt. The air thickened, a dense fog of despair swirling around me as I braced for the inevitable confrontation. But just before the shadow could reach me, a crack in reality burst open behind it, a shimmering portal beckoning. A fleeting thought urged me to take a leap into the unknown, to escape what loomed before me, but the horrific tableau unraveled and morphed around me, distorting my vision. "Join us!" they shrieked, echoing through the theater as their hands reached out in a grim collective embrace. And in an instant, I plunged toward the rift. Was it betrayal or salvation? As I watched the shadow lunging at me, eternal eyes filled with an insatiable hunger, the darkness swallowed me whole. "The truth awaits," a chorus of voices whispered, dragging me deeper into despair. And then, all fell silent, as if the world itself held its breath, awaiting my next choice. The abyss released me, expelling me into a void beyond comprehension. I landed painfully on a cold, damp surface, and the metallic scent of blood mingled with the acrid stench of mildew assaulted my senses. I pushed myself upright, my hands slick with moisture, the darkness around me oppressive, claustrophobic. Panic surged, threatening to overwhelm me as I squinted into the impenetrable blackness. Where was I? The echo of the theater's damning cries faded into the void behind me, leaving a suffocating silence that pulsed with an unnatural energy. I could barely focus on where to move, yet I was propelled forward, as if the darkness itself urged me deeper. The air thickened as the chill clung to my skin like a shroud, chilling me to the bone. After some tentative steps, I stumbled into what felt like a long, narrow corridor. The walls heaved and twisted as I pressed against them for guidance, the damp concrete seeming to come alive, squeezing me tighter with each step I took. It was as though the origins of the space were alive, a mourning creature echoing its sorrow in the very foundation beneath me. Images flickered across my mind, fragments of faces, Olivia among them, flickering like a candle's flame, just out of reach. Suddenly, without warning, the corridor split into two, a yawning chasm on one side filled with a whispering, swirling darkness, and the other a glimmer of distant light sparking against the shadowed edges. Fear tinged my instincts, urging me to flee the call of the darkness that licked at my feet. Yet a deeper pulse pulled me toward the light, as if it were the promise of salvation, the very essence of life and hope. As I edged forward, the whispers began to take shape, coalescing into words, strong and insistent. "You must choose," they screeched, the cacophony growing louder, rising from the depths of despair and fury. "Choose your path." I faltered, torn between the seductive pull of light and the cold grip of darkness lurking just beyond my peripheral vision. Then, out of the shadows, surged a figure, skeletal and gaunt, with eyes hollow and deep as the void itself. It stumbled forward, releasing pained gurgles that sent ice into my veins. Its face distorted, limbs stretched agonizingly, skin clinging like parchment over bone. "Help me," it rasped, with a voice threading through a web of agony and madness. Recognition flared briefly as the shadows contorted, conjuring more faces from my past grievances, faces I had abandoned, left to rot in the sorrow I had refused to acknowledge. Frantic, I stumbled backward into the light, my heart pounding like a drum of war. The specter lunged, claws poised to tear my skin from flesh, but I broke free from its grasp just in time, slamming through a threshold that erupted into a blinding brilliance. The world beyond was a breathtakingly surreal realm, a warped reflection of the theater yet carrying an air of tarnished beauty. The light didn't just shine but radiated heat, saturating the air with a palpable energy. Silver ribbons of glitter danced around me as I squinted, falling into an ethereal glow. I reached out, grasping loosely at the threads unraveling before me, almost entranced, but the enchantment quickly darkened. The shimmering threads began to twist violently, tangling around my wrists, pulling me back as a guttural scream resonated through the dimension-haunted, primal. Reality trembled as deep cracks seethed through the foundation of this new place, destabilizing the very light that had lured me. From the depths of chaos rose the phantoms I had just fled, their faces twisted into sneers, shadows crawling forth and merging into one grotesque form, eyes ablaze with fury. Did you think you could escape? They howled, echoing in eerie unison, their voices blending into an unbearable symphony of pain and regret that corkscrewed into my very being. You belong to us. Just then, the world gave way beneath my feet. I plummeted not into void or light but into a maelstrom of confusion. Whispers and screams enveloped me, pulling me deeper into an insatiable spiral of memories flashes. Of forgotten nights, choices I had made, and the bitter residue of lives lost washed over me like a tidal wave, and at the center of that tempest, a new face emerged, familiar yet monstrous, bearing a knowing smile that sent chills ricocheting through every cell in my body. Welcome home, it crooned, drawing nearer, revealing itself as Olivia twisted unrecognizably into the embodiment of the hurt I'd crafted. A surge of insanity erupted within me, drowning out my thoughts, and as I opened my mouth to scream, I found myself back in the theater, surrounded once more by that eager, hollow audience, shrieking for my reckoning once again. With the shadows closing in, I realized I was on the precipice of a decision far darker than I could have imagined. And just as the hands of the darkness enveloped my throat, squeezing tightly enough to steal my breath, the echo of a sing-song voice floated above all. The promise of truth lay just beyond comprehension, but the price would be more than I was willing to pay. As the darkness squeezed tighter, I realized I could no longer distinguish where I ended and the shadows began. I never could have anticipated what awaited me, the twisted culmination of my descent. Reality warped like a fragile film strip on a projector, sliced through years of regret and guilt, leaving jagged remnants of horrors I had once set in motion. In the fading illumination, the echo of laughter morphed into a cacophony seeking violence through the veil separating torment from escape. The audience, once blurred and indistinct, now came into horrific focus, faces of the people I had lost, contorted in anguish, yearning for salvation. Their eyes were the portals to their suffering, a reminder that I was the architect of this perpetual nightmare. I could taste the tang of betrayal as a piercing shriek stole the air from my lungs. You turned away. The whispers demanded, their unity amplifying my shame. You let us down. The shadows lunged, and I was shoved back against the stage, the very confines of the theater morphing into an echo chamber filled with roiling despair. Each figure in the audience rose, pushing against an invisible barrier, hands outstretched, mouths moving in synchronized agony, begging for a salvation that I had been too frightened to grant. I was trapped not merely in the theater but in a cycle of torment I had unwittingly activated, woven within the very fabric of my past decisions. Panic surged through me as I stumbled back, heart racing. What do you want from me? I gasped, the rawness of my voice swallowed by their ghostly cries. Finish it, they intoned, each spirit's voice now merging into a rhythmic chant resonating within the hollow shells before me. It was an undeniable summons, one woven not just into the theater but into the crevices of my mind. Could feel the shadows clawing, tugging at my consciousness, threatening to drag me into the depths if I dared to refuse. Olivia. I shouted, desperate to latch on to any shred of familiarity, but the name flitted through the fraying fabric of my reality like a ghost absent, mockingly removed from reach. Thin tendrils of darkness began to creep around me, swaddling me tightly, slick with a coldness that seeped through my clothes and into my bones. Suddenly, a bright flash illuminated the theater, and in that moment, my reflection could be seen in the mirror stage, though it was not my physical self that stared back. It was a distorted stranger, captured in a haze of pain and regret, not simply of myself but of every choice I had made. Images swirled like blinding lights, showing moments when I could have reached out, could have turned the tide of despair. Each flicker became an accusation carving deeper into my essence. Free them. The audience cried, their voices now a chorus of desperate souls tethered to my weakest moments. A dawning realization clawed at my mind. Unlike them, I still had a choice. It surged through me, igniting an ember of courage amid the engulfing darkness. I would not turn away again. I would face the truth of my choices, as the shadows lunged, I launched myself between them and the projector. The flickering light, with its historic images of joy turned to despair, was the linchpin. I would confront the truths I had long buried, I would not succumb but learn and adapt. With trembling fingers, I reached for the light. As my fingertips brushed the beam, the world shattered, fragments of memory cascading into an otherworldly construct, a spiraling montage of shadows and light, echoes of laughter weaving into cacophonies of pain. Welcome back to your reality, the nebulous figure, Olivia, echoed from the swirling chaos, but she was transformed, resembling a grotesque marionette of my own making, puppet strings laced with my own fears of inadequacy and torment. With every moment that swirled in front of me, the memories pulsed with an ethereal glow, but as despair gripped tightly at my throat, the pulse quickened to the rhythm of inequity that had woven itself into my identity. Choose. The shadows bellowed, their chilling laughter threatening to drown me again. Choose your price, or pay it with regret. My heart pounded, and within that chaos, I finally discovered the darkness lurking beneath it, a single thread of confrontation that linked me to the suffering around me. I was complicit in their torment, but within that same connection lay the opportunity for healing, a path to rewrite the threads that bound us. I gripped it with all my strength, feeling the reality stretch and twist, the shadows howling in agony as they were forced to face their own darkness through my light. That no longer will you hide. I screamed, and the theater erupted into fiery brilliance as the connection snapped. I was not merely an observer, but the bridge between regret and redemption. The laughter turned to screams as I unleashed the fractured memories, each fragment freeing the souls entwined in their prisons. One by one, they blurred and solidified, disentangling from the shadows, ascending toward the brilliant light beyond the glare of the projector, lingering in the memories of their anguish before breaking free. But even as the theater erupted with releases, a shadow surged forward, more powerful and insatiable than all the others combined. Its claws were old and mighty, and it locked its gaze onto me, something primal flickering within. You think this ends here? It hissed, voice engulfed in the symphony of chaos. Nothing escapes. The light dimmed for a heartbeat, and the air shifted, the very theater murmuring its displeasure at the dissolution of its grasp. The joyous souls twisted into memories of anguish once again as the figure drew closer, a storm of regret swirling around it, yelling louder now, welcome to the final act. With a dreadful realization dawning, I understood I had freed them, yet my own soul remained shackled, tethered to the horror I had reawakened. My freedom came at a price, and as the spectre lunged for me, I bit back the scream, knowing with fatal clarity that the choice I made now would determine which trail I would embark upon as the threads of existence twisted into a singular reality, merging past, present, and the remnants of lost souls forever entwined in my fate. That I in that fractured moment, the truth revealed itself not solely as a burden but as my guiding light. You are not just a prisoner, you are the keeper of their stories. The whispers resonated through the chaos, plea and command, and as the darkness swallowed me whole, I realized I hadn't been merely searching for salvation for the lost. I was the architect of their narrative, writing the penultimate scene in the theater of the damned. With a heart reckless and resolute, I confronted the shadow, exhaling the last remnant of terror I held onto. You will not consume me. I proclaimed, not just my voice, but a collective roar, the unity of every story whispered through the voices of those I had let slip away, and as the final words echoed through the theater, the shadow fell away, tension snapping in a burst of light that surged into the void with reverberating clarity. The truth is unyielding, and with it, so was the horror still waiting, primed to emerge anew, forever entangled in its embrace. I am reminded that even in my resolution, the darkness lingers, threading its way into our narratives, waiting for the moment when curiosity ignites its flame again. Forever will your shadows dance, I whispered ruefully, grasping the haunting realization that though I may slip away, the theater would always remain, a silent witness to our stories, each dangerous, daring, and bearing dark truths, waiting for an unwitting hand to awaken them once more. And as I turned to leave, I caught a reflection in the now cracked mirror, my own haunted visage, already yearning to tell the tale once again. Remember, this story never really ends.